I was going to say good afternoon, but it's now probably good evening, and I'm very cognizant of the fact that I'm one of the last blocks between an open bar, so I intend to just push through this with a little bit of pace. I think if I can talk, and thank you very much, Alex, I thought that was an enlightening way of thinking about where we are in the critical minerals, battery materials space. I think we all know why we're here, so we don't need to go through the disclaimer. So, if I can talk briefly about IEC, we're possibly the smallest ones presenting today, and thank you to Jane and David for the faith in bringing us along. We've got an EV of about $2.5–3 million. We're quite possibly, of the companies that are presented today, the oldest, which is a strange thing to think about, that we started our life as a company called Atomic Resources looking for uranium in Tanzania about 20 years ago. About a dozen years ago, the company transformed itself to a coal producer, buying some assets in Tanzania, and operated up until about 18 months ago as a coal producer out of Tanzania, largely due to some self-inflicted wounds. We didn't have a great relationship with the Tanzanian government, unlike other companies, and I'm pleased to see the progress that companies like BlackRock are making in that jurisdiction. It became apparent partly because the world was moving away from coal, and partly because of the troubles that we were having ourselves, that it was time to get out of coal and look at a new direction for the company. I joined as a director of the company about 2 years ago with the task of offloading the assets and moving the company in a new direction, and took over as managing director about 16 months ago. So we started a process of transitioning ourselves out of Africa. We don't have any problems with the African jurisdiction, just that it wasn't working for us any further, and we wanted to capitalise on what we strongly believed in, the thematic of moving into battery materials, and thought that our opportunities would be greater in Australia, and certainly we have some long-standing shareholders who are pushing us in that direction. We've transitioned the company, we've restructured the company, we've moved down from a board of 5 to 3, and we acquired an asset in Western Australia at a place called Yalgarra, which we think has a strong opportunity for nickel and copper. We liked this opportunity, came to us through some geologists that we had a long-standing relationship with, and they've retained 30% of the project. I'm not a geologist, I can't offer you a technical explanation or technical thoughts about that, but we did like it because, amongst other things, the area was completely unexplored. Not underexplored, but unexplored. So we liked the challenge of going into an area that we thought was relatively new. The geologists liked it because they thought that the geology was very similar to Chalice's Julimar project, and they'd been looking for some people to back them, and we happened to come along at the right time. So we've made a strategic transition out of fossil fuels into battery materials. Now we have a vision to become a leader in this sector. And this is our flagship project. It's 125 kilometres east of Kalbarri in Western Australia. We own 70% of it, and the licence was pegged by Century Minerals, who retain an active 30%. So we had anticipated getting onto the ground earlier. Unfortunately, with the restrictions of COVID, we all remember that, and West Australia being shut to us from the outside last year, we weren't able to get on until July, August. We have completed our ground and aerial truthing of the matter, and we have now zeroed in on an area in the northern block. I must say that the block that we have, the licence that we have, is 2 blocks. It's approximately 400 square kilometres and some reasonably dense ground scrub, so it does take some. Most importantly, we did find some lithium, but again, that's not going to be the focus of the company. The focus of the company is this target, which we've identified as calling Yallarong South. We found a number of compelling conductors, and overlaid with some soil and rock chips, we think that there's a strong possibility for there to be quite a long copper nickel sulfide resource there. So the next steps for us there are that in the next 4 weeks, we'll be running some ground loop over that and looking to identify some drill targets and be drilling subject to the usual heritage surveys and environmental surveys. We intend to be drilling that in August, September this year once we've further identified those targets. So in summary, we've transitioned out of fossil fuels, thankfully, and we're moving into battery materials. We think that Yalgarra will provide us with a strong copper nickel opportunity. There's an aggressive exploration program targeted, recommencing over the next couple of months, as I said, with some ground EM being run and then identifying the drill targets and then hitting them with the old truth stick, as people like to say, putting some holes into the ground in the next 3 or 4 months. So in a nutshell, we've transformed, we've transitioned, and we're realigning ourselves with where the world is at, and I'm happy to take any questions people might have at this point in time.
Why was it underexplored or unexplored?
Yeah, really good question.
Down there was like a Yeti or something.
Yeah, I think that there was probably something hiding in a billabong up there, but maybe a bunyip. But no, I can't answer that. And I think that we looked at a lot of projects trying to identify what our next steps would be, and that this attracted us, the fact that there hadn't been any work. There is a lot of work now being done in that area, that there's a number of people. There's S2 were active until recent. Todd River are drilling on our southern boundary. AQR is there. So there's quite a bit of exploration. Chalice have picked up some land that's on our eastern boundaries. So I think that people had just overlooked it or hadn't decided to go that far at that point in time.
You had mentioned that getting to the property can be difficult because of the shrubbery. If you could just potentially comment on the infrastructure. It does sound like you're saying that there's a lot more built up on the miners there, so can you just talk about what would be required from that perspective on your end? Yeah,
there's some ground scrub which makes it interesting in terms of our field work, our soil sampling. We did about just under 4,000 samples across the 2 blocks in quite long lines, and they were about 400 to 600 metres spaced apart. So just in terms of actually physically moving along, but there are a number of stations which we're working with, and in terms of getting around that area, there are basic tracks which we can get along. So we haven't had too much trouble getting in. It was just a problem for the geologists when they were doing the work, and they ended up, I think they were initially looking at using quad bikes to go from point to point and weren't able to do that, and they ended up having to pull a wheelbarrow along, which I'm thankful that it wasn't me doing it.
So you think that you have solved the issue necessarily?
I don't think the ground scrub's going to be a problem with us doing further exploration or ultimately drilling.